Have you ever felt stuck in your growth journey, wondering how to build resilience in the face of challenges?
Or maybe you're looking to shift your mindset and unlock your full potential.
Well, if you said yes, then you are in the right place.
Welcome to the Stretch Zone. I'm Hannah.
And I am Feds.
And here we explore self-development, nurture resilience, and embrace the mindset shifts that help you grow beyond your limits.
Hello and welcome to our new episode. And I'm going to start with a very deep question. Who am I? We were having a little bit of a laughter earlier because it is a deep question. But let's just start with something a little bit more relaxing. So, how are you, Hannah? Hi.
Good, thanks. We were having a little chat right at the beginning, and Fed's just read the title of what our podcast was today, and I had forgotten what the title was. So I thought she had entered the space actually saying, "Who am I?" And I thought, "Oh God, this is what we've got to work with today."
Exactly. It just made me think immediately. I was like, "Oh, to be or not to be? This is the question." So we're gonna talk about something quite deep today, but we're gonna try and do it with a little bit of humor, and we're gonna talk a little bit about our experiences. So the idea today is who do we become when we move to a new place. So who am I now? So how do we navigate these identity shifts after we move to a new place? And I think we should start with a little bit of a definition. What do we mean by identity shift? And so an identity shift is really a change of in how you see yourself. We're talking about your values, your roles, your interests, your sense of belonging. And so, of course, you can imagine that the exact moment when we are in a new environment, in a new situation, it could be a little bit destabilizing. Is that a word? Yes, I just made it.
Destabilizing. Yep.
And so we are going to talk specifically about moving abroad, but we thought also when people move, let's say, from the countryside to the city, from the city to the countryside, from north to the south, and vice versa. So there are many different situations that can have an impact on these identity shift because, as we said, the environment around us change. And it is often something very subtle. For some people, it might happen all at once. So there is no one size fit all rule here. And this is mainly because so many different things are changing at the same time. So it really depends on who you are as a person. We all have different experiences when it comes to this. In the vast majority of people, I think it's more of a situation where this feeling creeps up over time. So I don't know if it has ever happened to you guys that maybe you move to a different place and you start picking up a different accent, or for example, you start explaining things in a different way because you start working in a different office. You start wearing different clothes, you start liking different foods, and so you become a different version of yourself that you didn't even imagine could exist.
Absolutely. Every single thing that you just said then, Feds, I was just like, yes, tick, 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 tick. I remember the first time that I went home to the UK after I had been living in Australia, not Vietnam, but in Australia. Then people were like, "Oh, Hannah, you sound Australian now."
Yeah.
And I absolutely know that my accent is all over the place. I'm sort of thinking I might be a little less Aussie these days now that I don't live there. I don't think I've picked up a Southern drawl from America yet.
No, I can't hear it, but I think it's probably going to come at some point.
What about you? Did people used to comment on your accent ever?
Oh, all the time. I'm used to it. I think most people can't quite understand where I'm from at first. So I've heard all sorts of things. When I'm in the UK, people think that I'm America. When I'm an American, people think that I'm British. Someone told me, I don't know how, someone told me that I sound Scottish, and I'm like, no, mate, you're wrong. There's no Scottish going on here. Irish, I get Irish very often,
Yeah.
Canadian. No one ever tells me, "Oh, are you Italian?" I'm like, "No, no one. It's not really a thing." But it has changed
Yeah.
throughout the years, and in my case, it was also moving in with different flatmates.
Yes, absolutely.
That has an impact as well. So there are many different things that may trigger this kind of situation. Like you're moving away from your familiar anchors, your
Yeah.
job, your family, your social circles, your friends, your language. In my case, we have to adapt constantly to new customs, new ways of communicating, new expectations as well, of course. So all of these things have a very strong impact on who we are and how we see ourselves. Like we may start asking, who am I now?
Yeah. I remember really feeling that when I moved to the US more than anywhere else.
hmm
But I think we've talked about this before. My state of mind was definitely in a different. I came here fighting. I did, whereas the other places I've moved to were 100% my choice. I'm ready for this, and probably a little more open minded to it. So there's probably why I sort of felt that when I came to the US.
hmm
Much different now, but
hmm
yeah. So it's definitely a. I think people can relate to identity shifts for all different sorts of reasons. That
hmm
it isn't just moving. Some people will be just a new career. Maybe they've become a parent. Maybe their children have flown the nest. So these types of things can come up. This idea of an identity shift can come up for all sorts of people at different times. But you can really understand why, when we physically move somewhere, why I think that identity shift is so great. You know, we might look different to the people around us. We sound different. We
hmm
probably are also changing our career potentially. And even if it is the same career, it's done totally different in that new environment. So
hmm
everything is shifting around us. And when I was researching about sort of the sciencey side of things and uh, sort of more detail about this period of life that we're facing, there's actually a theory that is called liminality. The theory of liminality is this time in our life when we're in the middle of a transformation. We're in this sort of limbo between states stage. And there's three phases of liminality. There's that first initial stage, which is referred to as the separation. So we've obviously left behind our old life, maybe our old role, our old identity potentially. And then we're in the liminal phase, which is that in-betweeny phase where everything kind of feels maybe unclear. And I really love to talk about this stage because I have felt it millions of times over. This word here that comes up is feeling like limbo. You're not quite sure what's happening, where you've come from, where you're going to. You're in this in-between stage and state of being. And then there's a reintegration period. So you're sort of stepping into your new identity and a new way of being. Um, and that liminality stage, that in-betweeny phase, is really when the big shift is happening. And you're letting go of old. You haven't quite figured out what the new is yet. Um, And the really good part about what we're talking about, because it can feel really destabilizing, as you were talking about at the beginning, the really good part about this is on the other side of it, there's actually beautiful transformation that can happen. And
hmm
there's this blend that can be achieved of old
hmm
and new. And we can evolve into what kind of matters and what's important to us. I don't know if I feel like I'm out on the other side of liminality. I still feel like 2 years into living in the US, probably do still feel like I'm kind of in that in betweeny, but I feel much further along in that stage. And I think every move I've had, it's varied slightly in terms of the amount of time that I've needed. What about you, Feds?
I think I've always been in this phase too. I
Yeah,
was
no,
trying.
I was kind of
I
thinking the
was.
same thing.
I was smiling. Like for those of you who are listening on Spotify, I was smiling throughout the thing because I was thinking, have I ever
Got
actually
to the other
gone
side.
over exactly? And I think probably, well, yes, definitely. When I moved to London, eventually I got to a stage where I was so used to life in London and friends, and that's when I started looking for something different, and I wanted to stretch my comfort zone again. When I moved to the States, it was surprisingly quick for me to adapt, and I
Mm,
don't know exactly why,
mm,
um, but I think on one side it was because I had amazing colleagues.
mhm.
I felt immediately at home. I really liked the place. I mean, Florida can be a very weird place, but the seaside was amazing. You know, it was my dream to live in the States for a little bit. So I guess probably that helped. I think when we put ourselves in that mindset, in that condition, we are happy to change, then it's a little bit different. Like now I feel with my last move, I am definitely in the liminal phase because I'm resisting this identity shift. I don't want to go back. I feel like I do not want to absorb any Italianness.
And
No.
if anyone's new to listen to this, Feds has been living overseas for a good 10 plus years. I think it's 15 maybe. Um,
Hmm.
and has not that long ago, in the last 6 months, moved back to her home country of Italy. So it's been a big
No.
shift, and
Yeah.
brought her husband with her, and lots of different phases of life are
Yeah.
happening for you right now.
Yeah. So I mean, don't get me wrong. I love my country. But there are so many things that I don't want to associate with my identity. And I definitely want to hold on to the kind of person I learned to be
Yeah,
in the UK and in the States rather than I'm really selective. I'm really trying to let in only things that I appreciate about Italy,
yeah,
which is challenging.
yeah. And I think you've brought up something really important there, that you we as individuals, we sometimes put pressure on ourselves that when we move somewhere new, we have to 100% adapt. We're the ones that have chosen to move there. Therefore, it's our duty to completely blend in. And in fact, society has an awful lot of mixed stuff going on in the world, as we know,
Hmm.
always. Um, and I'm a big believer about cultures blending, but also holding on to traditions as well. And I think there's a place for both aspects. So
Hmm.
when I move somewhere new, I try not to put a huge amount of pressure that I must be exactly like everybody else around me. I still
Hmm.
try to hold my head up high and just be like, okay, well, maybe I dress a bit differently, but I'm going to make sure that it's not in a way that's provocative to whatever culture that I'm in. I will still make sure that when I was living in Vietnam, I learned very quickly that you must dress a certain way if you go to the temples. I respect that.
Yeah.
Um, but I also was told that because I was a foreigner, I could kind of get away with wearing different things and being different. I know, for example, in my neighborhood, I wear a big Panama hat to walk my dog in, and I'm most definitely the only person that wears that, and everyone comments on my hat because it clearly is not the done thing in my neighborhood in South Georgia. in and so I stand out with that. But
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm going to hold on to this Panama hat. It's
Yeah.
very
Yeah.
English of me, but
Yeah.
it, I guess, makes me look a certain way and definitely makes me stand out. And I'm going to
Hmm.
hold on to that. That's okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
But definitely.
I think that's an interesting point of view about how we are constantly trying to find this balance when we're trying to belong somewhere. And
Hmm.
how do we deal with that? I think it's okay to bring things from your past into the
Hmm.
now with you,
Hmm.
um, knowing that that might create a comment, it might create negative or positive things, and you'll decide kind of what you're going to bring forwards.
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm.
what traditions do you think, or anchors, do you think you kept hold of when you moved overseas?
Oh,
That's a
I
tough question, but what do you think?
I think the food definitely.
Yeah.
I think, but I think it's also because I like being the host. So
Okay.
I've always been the host. Like when I was in London, when I was in the States. Now it's a little bit different because I'm currently staying with my parents.
Yeah.
Oh gosh. But eventually I'm gonna go back being a host. Um, one thing about culture is that, of course, we can't erase it. It's
No.
impossible. Like, of course, when I moved to the UK, I was 20 years old. I was definitely feeling more Italian than now.
Yeah.
I had to adapt to a different way of chit chatting, a different way of talking to people, asking different
Yeah.
questions. But one thing that I've always done is inviting people over, having big dinners, having big gatherings. So I've always had, which is funny because my family doesn't really do this kind of things, but I always
Mm.
wanted to do it, and so I guess it's something that reminds me of. The stereotypical Italian family that has, like 4 hour lunch on Sunday, and so that's what I wanted to recreate. So I took that little bit of my culture and I brought it with me everywhere. Like I bring well, now I work from home, but I used to bring food at work, on my birthday, on special occasions. I bake cakes. Like, to me, that's something that brings people together. And so, of course, I'm keeping what I appreciate of my culture, definitely.
Mm-hmm.
It's not something that belonging somewhere else doesn't necessarily require you to erase something from your culture. Like the
Yeah.
hospitality, this idea of being very hospitable, that's definitely something that I'm bringing with me everywhere I go. And it's also something that is common to many different cultures.
Yes.
So it's
Yeah.
something that, that it brings us together, whether you are in Vietnam or whether you are in Australia or in the UK. I think there is a level of hospitality that, we can always find. So it's, yeah, that's my anchor, really, definitely.
Yeah.
What about you?
Um, I think it's that I have. I think it's my over politeness. I think
Mm.
it's my oh, I'm so sorry. I I did interrupt, but do you mind if I just, it's that Englishy, overly
Uh, yeah.
apologeticness that
Oh,
I've
yeah.
kept throughout.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I'd say that has stayed really strong with me. However, it's now very colourful and flavourful since I've
Mm-hmm.
had to adapt that. I know very quickly, within months of living in Vietnam, I grew up very quickly. in terms of my assertiveness. So I don't know if that's an English thing. It could have just been me being 26 and it's time to grow up. I'm now living in a new place. Um, I became very assertive overnight. And I don't know if English people are super assertive. They're not really, I don't think, on the whole.
Not in my experience, at
No,
least.
they're not super assertive. So I did
Mhm.
have to learn very quickly. I remember my parents coming to visit, and they didn't know who. Like I was there for about 4 months at that time when they first visited me, and they were like, "Wow, what a transformation!" Because I was negotiating taxi fares and walking away from people if I thought they were ripping us off, and basically trying to tell them, no, 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 I live here. I know how much it should be, and
Yeah.
trying to say numbers in Vietnamese. That was about as much as I could manage at the time. And then moving to Australia was really interesting. So Aussies are so the impression of Australia from an English point of view, growing up in the 80s, 90s, early 2000s, um, they're always really laid back, and they are, but they're not quite as laid back as you think. There's an awful lot of Europeans that have migrated to Australia. Lots and lots of Greek, lots of Italians, lots of
Mhm.
Lebanese. So not,
Mhm.
uh, those sort of three really big cultures are over in Australia, and I knew all all three blended. And so they have a lot to say and very opinionated. And the Aussies love to swear. Oh,
Sorry, it makes me laugh because I like one of my a very very good friend of mine who's also my last flatmate in London. She's Australian and she is the perfect example of what you're talking about
yeah. Okay.
in every way, shape, or form. Like she is extremely hardworking, but
Mm-hmm.
when she relaxes, she really knows how
Yeah,
to
yeah,
do
they
it
can. They
proper.
can
Like
totally.
she like work hard, play hard,
Mhm.
swears a lot.
Yeah.
So yeah, yeah. I loved living with her. Honestly, it was such a
They're a lot of fun. But I
yeah.
remember my first year there, and I'd already been with my now husband living in Vietnam for a couple of years. But the first few times I visited, and then when I lived there, I remember one of my closest friends was an English girl that I met in my first year, and both of us were just like, oh wow, they love to swear. That it was like really like I thought English people swore, but no,
No.
Australians on another level. And so very quickly I adapted to that, and now I'm married to an Australian. We've been together for 14 years, and yeah, it's just totally normal, completely and utterly normal to be F bombing, C bombing,
Yeah.
everything comes
Yeah.
out.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's all just part of the language. And moving then, so adapting to that way of being took me a minute. And then going from
Understandably.
to Southern America, where nobody swears, where crap is a bad word.
Yeah.
Now, I would say that was harder than moving from my English background, where we would swear a bit, to moving to Australia than moving here. Oh my
Yeah.
goodness, it is so different here. And I have to be so careful. So that was probably the first thing we instantly noticed was, wow, we've got to be careful with our
Yeah.
language here. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, that's been something to really adapt to.
Language I think is extremely important, and I think I definitely feel the impact of 10 years in the UK because when I first moved to when I first moved to London, of course, I was a bit shocked at the beginning by how much people apologized.
Yeah.
And I was like, coming from Italy, I was like, what are you sorry for? Like every single thing, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. I'm like, ugh. So it kind of like made me wonder, like, do I need to tell I'm sorry when I do this? I started copying, modeling my language and my attitude around this kind of behavior, right?
Mm.
10 years later, I moved to the States. Definitely apologizing is not as common, but still, it's definitely more common than in Italy, I have to say. And probably because I was
Mm.
also working in a hospitality setting, so a lot of, customer
Okay.
service. So I continued doing what I was doing. Now I'm back here, and honestly, people piss me off.
Because
I'm
they're not
Because
apologizing.
they don't apologize. Like nothing. I'm like, hey, you bumped into me. You should be sorry. Why don't you say that I'm sorry? You're sorry. Like, it's just so annoying. It really, really annoys me. And this is one of the things that I don't want to absorb. So, whenever I can, I try to be as British as possible. And people sometimes look at me as if I were an alien. They're like, "Why are you apologizing?" Like I don't know. I prefer that way of communicating to what happens here in Italy. Even
That's really
though,
interesting that it took you a while, but now that you're out of it, you're actually like, oh, that was quite nice.
yeah, yeah. I mean,
I
there's
wonder
a
if that's
limit.
going to happen to me. I kind of miss the swearing.
There's a, you know what? There's a limit. Like I know people in the UK who bless them, love them to bits, but that's way too much. Like they apologize for nothing, really. But I still believe that in the UK people are I don't know, in that sense they notice what they are doing. Probably sorry is used so much that it's diluted to the point that it has lost the meaning.
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
But then at the same time, when you say sorry, it means that at least you noticed that you did something wrong, let's say, something disrespectful. At least that. Here, people don't even notice.
Yeah.
There is no such thing. Like, I never hear people saying, I'm sorry for something. Anyway, so this is one of the examples where, yes, I was born and raised here, but I feel like I've lived abroad for so long that I just can't accept. Or, for example, like when I was in the States, everyone gets so excited for nothing.
I know. I kind of like that,
I
but sometimes
do.
it's a bit much.
Yeah, I do. And I used to have some of my colleagues, again, hospitality setting, you're a concierge, you work in a hotel. And so some of my colleagues, not all of them, but when I used to ask them, how was your day off? Oh my God, it was amazing. It was fantastic. We went to this great beach. And I was like, okay,
Yeah.
okay. Um,
Everything's amazing.
but I actually realized that I started not speaking in the same way, but I started looking at things differently. And so when I talk with my American colleagues, even now, and maybe I'm having a bit of a ish day,
Yeah.
and then I talk to some of them, I don't know, I get an instant boost and I'm like, oh my God, the world is so nice. It's
I think
sunny
that's
outside, like, ah.
definitely something that I would like to move away. So if I move back to the UK, the constant moaning would
Yeah.
do my head in now,
Yeah.
for sure. I love a bit of a whinge, don't get me
Hmm.
wrong, but
Hmm.
I do think that English people are very, very polite, but they also love a good moan and a whinge about things. So
Yeah.
yeah, that part I can sort of leave behind a bit more. There is something nice about sort of trying to sort of see the brightness in things, and I do think Americans can be a little bit easier going in that realm, for sure.
But so, do you think that we can pick and choose what we like, or is this something that we just absorb,
I
we just acquire?
I think both, I think it's our
Mm.
duty to sometimes sit back and
Mm-hmm.
take observation. We've chosen
Mm-hmm.
this life to move, to be in a new environment. And I certainly have decided to use it as a way to broaden me as a human.
Mm-hmm.
If you were to ask what's the best thing about living overseas, because I do think we do a good job of saying all the hard things about living overseas. But if
We
you were
do
to
indeed.
ask me, at some point we will do a podcast that's all about the beauty of living
Yeah.
overseas.
Yeah.
If you were to ask me what the good points are, it's about that. It's that self-development. It's that
Yeah.
eye-opening. It is seeing different points of view. It is seeing how people, I'm so fascinated by how people live differently around the world. I enjoy exploring that and seeing how that changes me as a person. I think
Mhm.
it can only build awareness and build growth if we are only surrounded by one point of view, one type of person. Then it inevitably means that we're going to be more narrow-minded. And as an individual, I strive to be as open-minded as I can be. It
Mhm.
doesn't mean that I agree with everything in
Mhm.
terms of where I am, but I definitely attempt to learn to accept and learn to live with.
Mhm.
Mm. Yeah, you know, every place I've lived, there's things in that country that have
Yeah.
disagreed with me.
Oh, yeah.
I, as a
Was there was there ever a moment when you thought, "Oh, man, I don't know who I am anymore?"
I definitely felt that when we first moved here. I've mentioned it a few times before. So, um, I it was a choice. It wasn't a choice move. It was a necessity move. We were in a pandemic. We both, my husband lost his career. He's the main breadwinner. So the US was the place that we could come to, which is fantastic, awesome. But for me, that stripped everything away that we were working towards in our previous life. We had to start again from the bottom and reinvent, and replan our future. So it was a very, very difficult time for us. And then I became very isolated when we first moved here, and it's taken a lot of energy to be able to be less isolated than other places that we've lived. So, yeah, that was the time I truly lost myself, I felt. Yeah.
So, what did you do that brought you back to a sense of control, let's say? I know where I'm going, I know who I am.
Yeah, it's taken really slow, steady steps. It was getting to a place of what was for me rock bottom, and anyone's rock bottom is going to be different. For me, that was a very low place in life, having to figure out again what's important to me and doing things that initially were stabilizing for me. So actually bringing things from my old life in a gentle way. That was just, you know, I was a yoga teacher in the past, so it was doing as much yoga focused things as I could within the home. Um, Making sure that I communicated with people. That was tough. So, anyone that's dealt with feeling very low, often we pull away,
Mhm.
which is one of the worst things about depression is that we then create even more depression by pulling away and not asking for help and not being around people.
Yeah.
So I managed to create small links with select people. Initially, that was just online with people in my world. And then slowly but surely, I was then integrating with a select few people that are on my doorstep near where I live. And then just taking it step by step when I felt ready again to be open and to be in a space where I could interact more
Mhm.
fully. But it was just, it's really no magic pill there. It is a slow, conscious effort to do things that felt good and nurturing
Mhm.
to me. And yeah, that's a lot of stuff from my past, probably, so that then
Yeah.
I could feel safe and ready to start accepting what was here in front of me and on my doorstep.
Yeah. I think one of the main obstacles for many people is this idea that you are not in control of who you are. You lost track of who you are. You don't know where you're going. You don't know how to recognize yourself anymore. And the exact moment when we start normalizing these feelings and knowing that eventually it is going to happen. It's not a sign of failure. It's just your response to a massive change around you.
It was true
Um,
change that I was dealing with, and I really
yeah,
thank you for saying what you've just said then, because that's exactly the essence of it. It is normalizing that, do you know what? Even with these tools, with this experience that I've had of being living overseas for however many years, it still can get you, and that you can still feel really rocked.
yeah,
And it's okay. And I think that was it. The moment I started to normalize it for myself and stop telling myself off for feeling how I felt, that was when
mm-hmm,
I was able to start thinking, okay, so what does matter to me? What is important?
mm-hmm,
And I started to create more purpose in my
yeah.
day, and then could start to plan the future a bit more again.
I mean, we've been talking until now, up to now, we've been talking about people who intentionally move to other countries. And of course, they talk to locals, they are curious about the local people. But let's not forget that there are also people who move abroad that who don't want necessarily to get in contact with the locals. Like, I met people in London who didn't speak English, and they lived and operated just in their own community. They
Yeah,
didn't speak English. They had only friends from their own country. They lived with people from their own country. There needs to be a level of interest in getting to know the local culture and the local anything really, from foods to language to traditions. I still believe that maybe it's a different kind of identity shift. Maybe they don't feel it as much as people like you and me felt it. But identity shifts are something that happen in life for many different reasons. It might also be the case that, people who don't want to mix and, talk to locals go through a different kind of change. Um, that could be another topic for another episode, actually. But they definitely go through different kind of feelings. I guess probably we are curious about what's around us, and we are curious about ourselves as well. We know that eventually a change is going to come,
yeah,
and so we might as well embrace it. We might as well let new interests in, habits, knowing that we are not really losing ourselves, we're just expanding. We are trying to do things differently.
yeah. And I think that's kind of the message here, that we really encourage anyone who is wanting that change
Hmm.
of moving somewhere to be as open-minded and as curious as you can be, knowing that it is going to feel bloody uncomfortable initially. And there will be ups and downs to it. And you'll be surprised at times when you feel so uncomfortable. But just know that in that time, there is mental growth every single time. And the
Hmm.
moment that, and I've talked about this before, the moment that I finally sort of felt stable, that was when I could then start to expand my horizons, start to expand my activities, start to expand my thoughts. And it was quite quick that I could then start to, once I sort of got to that point, it was quite quick that I
Hmm.
could see that I was coming out of this pit, and into a lighter space. Um, yeah, that is a fascinating one, and I think that's
Hmm.
where a lot of discomfort and prejudiceness comes up in the world, is the group of people that move but don't integrate and only
Hmm.
hold on to their past cultures or stay within um, their people.
Hmm.
Yeah, that would be interesting to talk to someone who maybe has lived that more, and see
Yeah.
what their point of view on that is, and why.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I mean, we you spoke a little bit about identity anchors, and this is an interesting topic that I think people who live moving abroad in
Mm.
that way take to the extreme, right?
Mm.
So we talked about anything from your culture, some rituals,
Could
food,
be.
language, music,
Yeah. Yeah.
anything that can help you stay connected to who you were back home. Um, and I think in life, all of these layers add up, like you have different identity anchors, a little bit from when you were in Vietnam, a little bit from when you were in Australia, a little bit from when you were in the UK. And so it becomes really like a lasagna.
Of course.
Sorry, I had to say that. But yeah, it is. And so I guess probably for people who experience this kind of move different, it's for them the identity anchors are imperative. They are above anything else. Um, but yeah, so at the end of the day, I feel like what we were talking about before, it's more the values that you bring with you in
Yeah.
your journey from one country to another that really make you feel like, well, I've grown, I'm a different person, I'm becoming something better, I'm expanding my personality rather than just limiting it.
Yeah, totally. So if we were to like summarize some of the things that we were talking about here, I think it's number one, when we go through the identity shift that's happening, just normalize that it's going to feel sticky, it's going to feel yucky, it's going to feel conflicting.
Yeah.
That's number one. It isn't a failure that you're feeling
Hmm.
that closed inness or discomfort or anger or just whatever it is that comes up for you.
Yeah.
And then I think it's then really, really try to stay curious. It
Hmm.
might not come straight away, or it might come right away, and then something might happen that closes you down, and then you can see if you can creep back out of that. Stay curious. I would say that's probably the one thing I really try to do through life. Um, yeah, stay curious. And then we've been talking about anchors, so making sure that whatever that anchor is for you. And I love what you said there, that actually, an anchor that I took from the UK to Vietnam could have been one thing. An anchor that I took from Vietnam to Australia, by the way, I learned to be a yoga teacher in Vietnam, so I didn't have that before. That then went with me to Australia to England, England to America. It could have kept changing and developing.
Yeah.
And then we want to constantly come back to our values. And it's always useful to do this. Our values don't stay the same. They probably won't
Hmm.
massively shift, but mine have definitely shifted over time. And of course they
Yeah.
do. We become parents, we become older, younger. We've got to look after older parents or I've got a dog. Um,
Hmm. Oh, I've just
realizing,
adopted a dog.
oh, you
So,
have.
yeah.
We'll talk about that afterwards. What's its name?
Well, so we're gonna get her in August, but her name is Monkey. We don't know if we want to keep it or change it, but yeah. But you see, like speaking about dogs, I've always loved dogs, but I never thought about adopting a dog. This is something that changed in the last few years,
Yeah,
and so
important.
values have changed.
Totally,
Yeah.
absolutely. Um, yeah, the things that are important to you shift and change. We lost loads of money in COVID. Now suddenly money is more important, way higher on my value list than it ever used to be. So things really, really change.
Hmm.
Um, And then there's this idea that we've talked about balancing your old traditions with new things. So
Hmm.
who knows? Maybe this year I'll actually celebrate Thanksgiving. Maybe I'm ready
Oh. Oh.
to start embracing the new cultures.
Well,
I've
4th of July is coming up, so that's going to be the next
got
one.
That's true. It's a Memorial Weekend here, and someone said, "Oh, I hope you're having a nice Memorial weekend," and I went, "Memorial
Well,
weekend?" I had no idea. I really need to pay more attention to these things, for sure. Anything else that we were mentioning there that I've left off?
but I think that you summarized everything quite neatly, to be honest. I mean, at the end of the day, it's a personal journey, right? So the way we integrate in a new place is extremely personal. Like your story is definitely important. As long as we are, I think there are two main things. As long as we are respectful of the place where we are living, and as long as we give ourselves the time to adapt and learn from our experience, then that's the most important thing, in my opinion.
Definitely.
But I'm curious to know because I have quite a lot of clients who have moved or are going to move from one country to another. So I would love to hear from whoever is listening, and I'm curious, like how has moving abroad shaped your identity, and also how do you honor your heritage while living in a new country? What do you do to balance these two aspects?
Yeah, perfect. And our next podcast is going to be about how do you handle constructive criticism without
Mm,
taking it personally. That is
yeah.
something that I, being super English, really struggle with.
That's going to be a hard one, definitely. Reach out to us, people. Talk to us. Let us know. You're going to find us on Instagram, YouTube. We are at the Stretch Zone _ podcast. And of course, let us know. Let us know if there's anything as well that you want us to talk about. Share with us your thoughts. We're always happy to listen. Um, Thank you, Hannah. It was a pleasure as always.
Thanks, Feds, and we'll catch you very soon.
Yeah, bye. Wrapping up today's episode, remember, you don't have to face change alone.
If you'd like to connect or learn more about working with us individually, reach out to us through our Instagram account at @thestretchzone_podcast, or find our emails in the footnotes to this episode. We're here to support you on your journey, each in your own way.
Thanks for tuning in to today's episode of The Stretch Zone. If today's discussion resonated with you, remember to subscribe, leave a review, and share the episode with anyone who might benefit. Until next time, keep stretching beyond your comfort zone.